I suggest you to iron the feather part of the wings and tail, just to make them more delicate. I'm using my iron on wool setting without any steam, and I'm also making sure I'm only pressing on the feather parts of the wing or tail. Iron the feathers from the both sides. Now let's start with the tail. We are taking the biggest piece we have and placing it on our dove's tail part. Make sure that both sides are symmetrical. As you can see, all pieces still have some thickness on the sides, so we can cut it off. This will make it way more natural and easier to blend. I'm also cutting off some thickness from the top part of the piece. Before moving on, I'm doing it for all my tail pieces. Now let's place the biggest piece on the dove, again making sure that the sides are symmetrical. Now it's time to felt it in place. I'm using 38 spiral needle. It's my favorite needle for attaching things, but you can use any needle you like. When I feel like it's secured from all sides, I'm switching to my multi-needle tool with 3 40 gauge needles in it. Here is how it looks when it's completely attached. I'm not worrying about blending edges just yet. We will work on it later. Now I like to take my scissors again and cut some feathers to make them look more delicate. We will do the final shaping of the tail later, but it really helps to do some cutting at this stage, just to make it easier for you to see how to place all the other parts of the tail. If you find any fragile bits, as I just did here, make sure you cut them off. And now it's time to attach the next layer. I'm adding the base of this piece just above the previous one. And when attaching, I like to pull the side feathers a bit lower than the last ones. Now just felt it in place and follow it up with another piece, leaving the smallest one for the top. When all pieces are attached, it's time to give the tail its final trim. I'm again refining the shape of the feathers as well as playing with the lengths a bit more to create more dimension. You can also adjust the direction of the feathers. Just pull them in the way you want and felt their bases down a little bit. After wet felting, some of the feathers are quite wide, so you can cut them in half. Make sure you look at the tail from all sides and you're happy with the placement and the length of all the feathers. Give special attention to the top ones and felt them down to secure their placement. Here is the final look. As you can see, there's a bit of a curve from one side to another. I also like to mess the feathers up quite a bit, just to make sure they're all secured and my dove will look beautiful even after years of displaying. This is completely optional, but I also like to work on the part under the tail. I'm taking a small piece of wool and filling in the groove. And then I felt it all in. Here I'm using my multi-needle tool with 3 40 gauge needles, but you can also use a single needle. Here you can see how the first layer looks. I think I'll need to add some bit more wool to make it more fluffy and look more natural. To keep some of the fluffiness, I'm not felting this wool down as good as I did the previous one. And now it's time to fill in the wrinkles we made by attaching the tail. I'm taking tiny pieces of wool, placing them onto the wrinkles and felting them down. I suggest you work with tiny pieces and add more wool if needed. It will mostly depend on how visible the line of the tail is. Work your way all around the body. Here is my tail all blended, and we can move on to attaching the wings. Here is the wing piece we made. As you can see, it lacks structure and can't hold itself, and we have a tiny piece we need to attach here. So let's first firm this wing up. I'm taking tiny bits of wool and felting them down in the middle of the wing. You can test if you need to add more wool by picking the wing up. If it can hold itself like this, you are done. I'm also turning the other side and felting down any fluff that's caused by my needles going through the wing. As you can see, the fibers aren't felted down completely. It will help with attaching the extra feathers. Now it's time to take your scissors and refine the shape of the feathers before we move on. Now take your smaller feathered piece and place it on the wing like this. I will just cut off this little piece. And now I'm attaching it to the wing. I'm skipping my 38 gauge needle and I'm going in with my multi-needle tool with 3 40 gauge needles in it. It's a bit more stabbing, but it's avoiding the needle marks. Please make sure you're not felting the feathers down. If you do find edge like this in your make, you can just cut it off. And then add some tiny pieces of wool for blending all the wrinkles. I also like to felt the upper side of my wing, holding my needle diagonally. This makes this edge more softer and natural looking. Now repeat these steps for the other wing. To decide on the position of the wing, first place it down like this, so the tip of the wing is in the same length as the tail and it's folding over the back just a little bit. Now make sure that your dough is standing straight and slowly turn the wing up. I find it looks better if the angle between the upper part of the wing and body is more than 90 degrees. So I'm keeping it that way, but you can always make your own changes. To save myself some felting, I'm cutting off this excess edge here. And then I'm attaching the swing using my 36 spiral needle, moving on to my 38 and multi-needle tool with 340 triangles. Then I'm covering it up with some wool and blending the attachment zone with the rest of the body. I'm spending quite some time on this because I want it to be as smooth as possible. And again, the less fiber you will have on the edges, the more seamlessly it will blend. And here is this wing finished. Now we have just to repeat all the process for the second one. This time it's way easier to position it as we can use the other one as the guideline. And here is the result. And again, it's completely optional, but I like to fill in these gaps up here. It's the same process as with the tail, but this time make sure you're using tiny bits of wool, not to make your wings bulky. If you will add too much, your wing will fall down. So I like to add small amount but spread it quite wide, as you can see here, and work on really hard on blending it with the body and the wing. Now it's also the time to check the whole body and add more wool where needed. After filling in the top part of the wings, there is this fold here that I would like to blend with some more wool. And we are done! We can now move on to the face.